The briefing room was tense, the hum of fluorescent lights buzzing overhead like a swarm of insects. Officers and enlisted personnel shuffled papers, whispered in corners, and adjusted their uniforms, but the center of attention was already obvious. Major Reynolds, known for his sharp tongue and sharper ego, leaned casually against the front table, smirking as he scanned the room. His eyes landed on Lieutenant Harper, the newest female Marine in the unit, and the smirk widened. She had earned a reputation for her precision and calm under fire, but Reynolds didn't know the half of it, or maybe he thought he did. "Lieutenant Harper," he drawled, voice carrying just enough amusement to be cutting, "I hear your last deployment went, interestingly. Care to tell us how many you've taken out of the fight?" He waved a hand loosely, emphasizing the joke, as if the room were supposed to erupt in laughter. The officers exchanged uneasy glances. Some stiffened, unsure if this was an appropriate question or a setup for ridicule. Harper's jaw tightened slightly, but her posture remained perfect, disciplined. Her eyes, sharp and unwavering, met his directly. She didn't flinch, she didn't stutter. There was a quiet, lethal calm about her, a sense that words mattered less than the weight behind them. "Sir," she said, her voice steady, controlled, "I don't keep count of lives taken. I keep track of missions completed, objectives secured, and the lives I managed to save." A ripple ran through the room. Reynolds' smirk faltered for just a fraction of a second before he recovered. "Oh, come on, Harper. Everyone's curious. Surely you have a number. Give us a little color. Make it entertaining." Harper's gaze didn't waver. She took a slow, deliberate breath. "I don't entertain death, Major. I respect it. I respect every life I can't save and every life I'm tasked to protect. If that's not entertaining enough, I suggest you reevaluate your sense of humor." Silence. Absolute silence. The room, usually filled with murmurs and shuffling, froze. Some officers shifted uncomfortably, realizing the weight behind her words. Harper wasn't lecturing. She wasn't angry. She was stating a fact with such precision that it landed harder than any reprimand could. The joke that Reynolds thought would land in laughter instead hung like a dead weight in the air. Reynolds' smirk had vanished entirely, replaced by a flicker of unease. He opened his mouth, probably to counter, but Harper didn't give him the satisfaction. She leaned forward slightly, just enough to convey authority without aggression. "Major, if you want to joke about kill counts, you should at least understand the cost of the actions you're trivializing. My job isn't a scoreboard. It's a responsibility I carry into every engagement. Every life taken weighs on me. Do you even know what that feels like?" There was a subtle shift in the atmosphere. The junior officers, who had been nervously suppressing smiles or chuckles, now stared at Harper in awe. Some had heard stories of her exploits in the field, swift, calculated, deadly when necessary, but this was the first time they had seen her presence and conviction dominate a room like this. Reynolds coughed lightly, perhaps to cover his own discomfort. "Well, point taken, Lieutenant," he muttered, trying to regain his composure, though the smirk never returned. He looked down at his notes, avoiding her piercing gaze. The lesson had been delivered without a single raised voice, without a threat, but it resonated louder than any reprimand or argument he could have thrown. Harper straightened, her expression returning to neutral, but the fire in her eyes remained. She had made her point. Respect wasn't demanded with words or rank alone, it was earned through presence, conviction, and, when necessary, silence that carried more weight than any joke could. The room slowly exhaled, the hum of fluorescent lights suddenly noticeable again. Officers whispered to one another, recalibrating their perception of the woman they had just underestimated. Harper turned toward the door, signaling she was ready to move on, ready to brief her team on the next operation. She didn't need approval, laughter, or applause. She had made it clear that in her world, respect was earned, and every life, even the ones taken, was never trivialized. As she walked out of the room, the impression lingered. Major Reynolds remained rooted for a moment, staring at the door, perhaps for the first time seeing Harper not as a newcomer or a female Marine, but as someone whose presence alone could silence a room and force reflection. The echo of her words stayed with him, unsettling, powerful, and undeniable. The night was dense, thick with fog that clung to the terrain like a living thing. Harper's boots sank slightly into the damp earth as she moved silently with her team, every sense alert. The mission briefing had been clear. A rogue cell was holding hostages in an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of the city. Time was critical, and intelligence suggested the group was armed, dangerous, and unpredictable. Harper adjusted her gear, checking her rifle, the night scope, and the comms one last time. Her team followed her lead, but she noticed subtle hesitation in one of the junior Marines, a rookie who had yet to experience the real chaos of combat. She didn't have time to coddle him, but a single glance and a firm nod reassured him, discipline tempered with awareness. The perimeter of the warehouse came into view. Shadows stretched unnaturally across the broken concrete and rusted metal, and the faint glow of lanterns inside outlined the silhouettes of the hostiles. Harper crouched behind a low wall, signaling the team to spread out, each movement precise, calculated. No chatter, no unnecessary noise, just the quiet rhythm of soldiers moving with purpose. Reynolds' earlier joke about kill counts echoed briefly in her mind, but she pushed it aside. Here, in the field, there was no room for ego, no room for trivial games. Every life mattered, even the enemy's. The objective was the hostages. The rest, collateral damage, kill counts, personal pride, was irrelevant. On my mark, Harper whispered into the comms. The team tensed, bodies coiled like springs. The night air was thick with anticipation, every rustle of the wind, every distant sound amplified. Harper took a final scan, eyes sharp, mind methodical. She calculated angles, predicted movement patterns, and prepared for contingencies. The breach was swift. Harper led the way, kicking the door open, her team right behind her. Chaos erupted inside. Hostiles shouted, guns fired, and the sharp crack of suppressed rounds echoed through the warehouse. Harper moved like water, fluid and deadly. Every shot was precise, neutralizing threats without endangering the hostages. Her training, instincts, and cold focus combined to create a rhythm that her team instinctively matched. One of the hostiles lunged toward a hostage, a desperate attempt to maintain control. Harper's response was instantaneous. She fired a single round, hitting the man in the shoulder, incapacitating him without fatality. The hostages screamed, frozen with fear, but Harper's calm voice cut through, "Stay down. You're safe. Don't move." The weight of authority in her tone settled the room, even as adrenaline surged. Time seemed to stretch. Another hostile emerged from a shadowed corner, weapon raised. Harper didn't hesitate. She disarmed him, leveraging his momentum and using him as a shield to guide him to the floor. No unnecessary violence, no wasted effort, every action measured, every decision precise. By the time the last hostile was restrained, the warehouse was eerily quiet except for the heavy breathing of her team and the subdued sobs of the rescued hostages. Harper moved quickly among them, checking injuries, offering calm reassurance, her eyes scanning for any remaining threats. She ensured the team secured the perimeters and called for extraction, all while maintaining an unbroken presence of control and authority. As they waited for the extraction, Harper allowed herself a brief glance at her team. They were tired, adrenaline still high, but they were intact, no unnecessary loss of life, no recklessness. She gave a nod, small, but affirming, and the rookie returned it with a newfound respect, a quiet acknowledgement of the lessons he had just witnessed. In that moment, Harper's earlier confrontation with Reynolds felt distant, almost irrelevant. Here, under fire, in the tension of life and death, her principles were evident: precision, responsibility, and respect for life. The mission's success wasn't measured in kill counts or bravado, it was measured in the hostages, safe extraction and the control maintained amidst chaos. When the extraction helicopter's blades began to slice through the night air, Harper took one last sweep of the warehouse. Every threat neutralized, every life accounted for. She breathed, not relief, but focus. There would always be another mission, another challenge, but tonight, her team had prevailed, and the cost had been controlled. Every life spared was a victory, every decision deliberate. As the helicopter lifted, Harper's mind ran through the events, analyzing, learning, refining. She thought briefly of the briefing room, of Reynolds' smirk, of the dismissive joke. Out here, in real danger, respect wasn't something to be demanded. It was earned through action, calm under pressure, and unwavering commitment to principle. And tonight, Harper had earned it, not with words, but with every measured, decisive move she had made. The debriefing room was quieter than usual when Harper walked in. The tension from the night's operation still hung thick in the air, but it was different this time, less chaos, more reflection. Her team filtered in behind her, still riding the adrenaline high but noticeably calmer, aware of the gravity of what they had just survived. Major Reynolds was already there, standing by the map table, shuffling papers with an attempt at casual composure. Harper noticed the slight twitch in his jaw, the way his eyes avoided meeting hers directly. "Lieutenant Harper," he began, voice carefully neutral. "Good work last night." His words felt formal, almost awkward. He wasn't joking, smirking, or making any thinly veiled comments this time. His tone carried a grudging respect. Harper nodded once, keeping her posture disciplined, her expression unreadable. Reynolds shifted, clearly trying to reconcile the Marine he thought he knew with the one who had just orchestrated a flawless extraction under life-threatening conditions. I suppose you have a method for all that precision." "Not exactly what I expected when He stopped himself, realizing that the words he had prepared, the jokes he had intended, were meaningless here. Harper's presence, her efficiency, and her restraint spoke louder than any quip could. Harper finally allowed a hint of a smile, brief but controlled. "Sir, the method isn't complicated. It's respect. Respect for life, respect for your team, respect for the mission. That's all any Marine can rely on when the situation becomes unpredictable." Reynolds exhaled slowly, almost as if releasing some tension he hadn't realized he was holding. "And the ones you couldn't save." His voice was quieter now, tinged with something like curiosity rather than challenge. Harper's eyes softened slightly, remembering the hostiles she had neutralized without lethal force, the hostages she had pulled to safety, the team she had guided through chaos. "You remember what I said in the briefing, Major. I don't keep count of kills. I keep count of lessons learned, missions accomplished, and lives protected. That's the only metric that matters." The room seemed to exhale collectively, the weight of her words settling in. The junior Marines who had once whispered among themselves now looked at her with newfound admiration. They had witnessed the raw execution of leadership, courage, and morality in action, proof that Harper's calm command was not just theoretical, but lived and tested under fire. Reynolds straightened, finally meeting her gaze directly. "Lieutenant Harper, I misjudged you. I underestimated what it takes to balance precision and humanity in a real operation." There was an almost humbled tone in his voice. For a man used to commanding with authority and assuming compliance, admitting such misjudgment was rare. Harper nodded once, her acknowledgement quiet but firm. The team filed out for their individual debriefs, leaving Harper and Reynolds momentarily alone. The silence between them was filled with unspoken acknowledgement. She didn't need to lecture him, and he didn't need to assert dominance. The truth had been demonstrated, unambiguously, in the field. Respect had been earned, not demanded, and Reynolds had witnessed it firsthand. Harper gathered her things, preparing to leave the room, and paused at the door. "Major, remember this. Leadership isn't about jokes, bravado, or counting kills. It's about responsibility, integrity, and the people you serve with. Everything else is noise." Reynolds stayed still for a moment, then nodded. "Understood, Lieutenant." For once, there was no smirk, no attempt at humor, just recognition of her competence and character. As Harper exited the room, the corridor felt lighter, the weight of judgment replaced with respect earned through action. The night's mission, the precise execution, and the unwavering moral compass she had displayed would leave a lasting impression on the team, and even on Major Reynolds, who would likely carry the lesson with him for the rest of his career. Outside, Harper took a deep breath, letting the cool air settle her adrenaline. She had led, she had protected, and she had proven that strength and compassion were not mutually exclusive. In every corner of her life as a Marine, she would continue to embody that balance, knowing that respect, discipline, and moral clarity would always outweigh jokes or empty bravado. And to everyone watching this story unfold, remember Harper's lesson. Real courage is measured not by numbers, but by choices, integrity, and the lives you touch along the way. If you want more stories that inspire, shock, and reveal the incredible human spirit, make sure to subscribe to Her Story's Words. Every story shows courage, every story shows heart, and every story proves that one person's actions can change the room, and sometimes the world.